Hey, what's good? This video came across my feed. It's by the Middle Nation YouTube channel. And this guy is Muslim, so he has a strong opinion about how non-Muslims live their lives. Last we heard from him, he said something to the effect of, if you have a lot of money and don't build up the others around you, then you're not living up to the responsibilities of a real man. This video is called Western Misconceptions About the West. Let's check it out. While we do that, I'm going to keep working on this kid's book. But before we get into it, remember to go to coconutjustice.com and get you some clothes that I think would look really good on you. Let's go.
I was invited recently to participate in a panel discussion about Western misconceptions about Islam. I was promptly disinvited because apparently I'm controversial. I did hesitate actually to accept the invitation in the first place because I told the host that I'm not strictly speaking a religious speaker. He had a number of da'is and comparative religion debaters who were going to be on the panel, and I figured they would be sufficient for their discussion. But anyway, I did accept the invitation, the momentary invitation, because frankly, I wanted to redirect the whole inquiry. Because in my
Okay.
opinion, this whole proposition is misguided. I don't see any point in correcting Western misconceptions about Islam generally, when in fact their misconceptions about their own so called civilization are much more debilitating for them. I think that's much more serious. If you can correct these misconceptions, then I
Yeah.
think Islam can pretty well speak for itself. And the whole idea of explaining Islam to these people while they are living in a state of abject confusion and abject ignorance about their own society, well, it just doesn't make sense to me.
That makes sense, right? So what he's saying is, why try to correct people that don't want to be corrected for a number of reasons, but primarily because they're also confused. We we can't even we can't even get it right in Christian culture. We can't even get the day of worship correct. We have so many different religions. And I read a T-shirt, a bumper sticker. I don't even remember what it is, but it said, with so many religions, there's a lot of people going to hell. So why try to correct people if they're, and that's an unfortunate thing about our society is we think we're right. We don't want to listen to anyone else, and we just keep pushing, even though we might be misguided or misinformed. Um, let's see what he has to say.
In fact, I think it just contributes to their delusions about the West
Yeah.
because it presupposes that they are in some sort of a position to judge another civilization, another belief system. We're supposed
Yeah.
to explain to them in a way that will align with their completely inaccurate understanding of who they are and what kind of a society they live in and what kind of a so called civilization they come from. Like,
I
for example, we're
mean,
supposed to convince them that Islam respects women's rights as if they respect women's rights.
I mean,
We're supposed to assure them that Islam does not oppose liberty as if their society does not oppose liberty.
you know what I'm saying? We, the West, has, it took them forever to let women vote. It takes forever to let women, to believe or to trust that women can make decisions on their own bodies. And I'm not saying that Islam is I don't I haven't studied Islam in great detail, so I don't know their stance on all of these things. But what he's saying is, how dare you judge us and tell us what we're doing right and wrong when you guys don't even do it right and wrong? Or when you guys, well, you know what I mean. When you guys don't even, when the understanding that you have about women is incorrect.
We're supposed to tell them that Islam is not violent, when they are the most violent civilization that has ever plagued this earth? So it has always seemed to me that
Where is the
step
lie?
one is getting Westerners to actually understand what the West is and what it isn't.
Yeah.
I don't think you should ever take an approach to them that affirms their delusions in any way whatsoever. I mean, how are you gonna get someone to understand the truth about your civilization when they are completely immersed in falsehood about their own so-called civilization?
We can't even
Like I'm
get our
supposed to
own
convince
act
you
together with each other.
about the moral rectitude of Islam while you
And more than that, like everything that we do, all of these culture fights and all of these things that the powers that be, the rich people, use to distract us, all of that falls into this. Like, who cares what a person, as long as a person is not breaking the law, leave them be. That is liberty. That's what he's saying. Like, we can't even mind our own business. We can't. Our house is dirty. Our house is crumbling. Our streets are crumbling. Our bridges are crumbling. People are fighting constantly. We can't get our act together. How are we going to go around and tell the world how they should live? We have to clean our house first.
the least moral so-called civilization in history? No.
Yeah.
You need to know yourselves. You can talk to each other about women's rights, but you can't say anything about that to anyone in the global south. When you talk about respecting women, where it's like Diddy talking to his mother or something, you know, talking to someone who doesn't know that man, who doesn't know what he does, who doesn't know how he behaves, and who just thinks the best of
Wow.
him. No, the global south knows
Wow.
what you did and they know what you do. You would
I always have this conversation with people with how we put America specifically, because other countries are just not my business. But America specifically, we put so much garbage content out there and we pollute the world with nonsense. And then we go around judging people and telling everyone that they're doing it wrong. Like, we get mad because China's version of TikTok teaches math, teaches programming, all that stuff, and our kids are eating Tide Pods and some of these dance challenges that are happening. Wow. Like, yeah, yeah. We don't even invest in education properly. We don't even invest in education. Like the schools, the teachers have to come out of their own pockets for supplies. And we're trying to tell the world you want to be like us. With the gall.
to know the BTK killer by talking to his wife and family or his co-workers or the people at his church.
Who was BTK?
I mean, they tell you how wonderful and mild-mannered he is, how decent he is, how respectful he is.
Yeah.
No, you need to talk to the people who he tortured. You
I
need to talk to the
mean,
victims who survived his attacks. That's how
you know
you'll
what I'm
know what
saying?
kind of a man he is. If you want to know how much the West respects women and how much they believe in human rights and dignity and so on, then you need to talk to their victims and see if they agree with their propaganda.
You know what I'm saying?
Did you believe in equality and women's rights when you were raping Congolese women in public? When you were committing mass rapes in Algeria as counterinsurgency?
And the content that we're putting out there makes it easy for people to criticize us like this. And I'm not saying that this is not merited. Our country operates like a bunch of bullies, but we don't even take care of our own people. We don't educate our own people. We don't motivate our own people. Jumping on a news program and saying, pull yourself up by the bootstraps. That's not the way to do it. That's not the way to do it. And then we put out this goofy content that has no educational value at all. It's like junk food for your brain. And we put that out there, and then folks like this guy, and again, I'm not coming down on him or I'm not trying to protect us at all. I'm just saying, like, he is able to take a look at everything that we do. We respect women and all this stuff, but then all of these very famous and rich people are getting in trouble. They're going to jail for having sex with 13-year-old girls. We're putting this content out there for people to judge us. And we have to take it. We have to take it because we refuse to learn. We refuse to learn from history.
Tactics? You know, did you believe in women's freedom and equality when you locked women in Namibia in concentration camps and raped them en masse? Or when you basically decriminalized raping African women because you thought they weren't actually even human?
I mean,
when you raped Angolan women in refugee camps or forced Indonesian.
Hang on. I need to catch my breath because this guy is coming at us. We, as a country, have done very bad things in efforts to be the dominant global power, whatever else. This is specifically why we need to have and keep a strong military, is because we go around just decimating the planet. And if people speak out, they either get, taken care of, or they go missing, or they get called names and they get shunned on social media and the news and everything. When it's people like this that are giving us that hard pill to swallow called reality. And the reality is, like, we're not living, going back to religious speak, we're not living as Christians. We are living as bullies. We're going around doing all of these things and with little to no care as to what the outcome is going to be. People with power, people with money, they live their life in a way where they don't have to worry about consequences because they could just pay it away. That's why they drink and drive, or they have freak-off parties, or they start embezzlement things where, the Bernie Madoff, where he stole all those people retirement plans. Like, it just seems like our leaders are just there to trick us out of money and trick us into letting them have more power.
Into sexual slavery, or committed widespread and entirely routine and approved of sexual violence across Vietnam, across Cambodia, Laos, and so on, and in Burma.
And take a look in the 90s when the crack epidemic was happening. Come to find out, it was the CIA? The CIA was trafficking cocaine in and selling it, giving it to people like Freeway Rick Ross and stuff like that, having him out there poisoning our people. And it was our own government doing that, making the money so then they can go fight some more bullshit wars. And then those wars fail, and then we get in some absolutely corrupt government officials over there, and then the people have to leave because they don't want to live under a constant state of stress and of worry and of danger. And then they come here because, well, hell, we're the ones who started it. And then when they get here, we want to zip up the border and kick everyone back to wherever the hell it was and separate families and do all the things. And I'm not saying finishing this wall is not the right answer. I'm at the point now where let's just finish the wall. Hopefully that will give our immigration team department enough of a break to be able to fix itself. But man, we kick up a lot of dirt, and then we don't want to face the consequences of all the dumb stuff that we're doing around the planet.
What was that? feminism, and when you raped Filipinas en masse, writ large. Where were your sophisticated values then? I know I'm not talking about ancient history. Yes, you did it
Well,
in
here we go.
colonial times, and you've kept doing it ever since. You never
Yeah.
stopped enslaving women, raping women, murdering women in the global south. You never stopped doing that. You were doing it in Iraq, you were doing it in Afghanistan, and in Haiti, and in Bosnia, and in Syria. Yes, in fact, when
And from what I understand, there's a lot of really shady things happening in the Middle East, with Israel and everything that's happening out there. Like it's so unfortunate.
you calculate your rape statistics, as bad as they are, the way you calculate them, you fail to include all of the rapes that you commit overseas. When you put together how many of your own women get raped and assaulted in your own country, you should actually add to that all of the women that you rape and assault in other countries.
Mm,
You know, you talk about
mm,
immigrants coming to the West and being criminals, but you never sent anyone but criminals to the global South.
you know what I'm
All
saying?
your Western Enlightenment colonizers, all your praise the Lord and pass the ammunition missionaries, all your God bless America soldiers, all your degenerate businessmen, your so called best and brightest that you sent over to our countries, who came to our countries to civilize us and Christianize us, to save our women from oppression and misogyny and our backward ways and our backwards cultures.
Yeah.
You only sent over rapists and torturers and murderers. That's who you
That's what
sent over to
happens every
civilize us. Why,
time.
I don't know how you
That's
can
what
even have the
happened when they
gall
found
to pretend
America.
that you ever cared about women's rights. When all that you ever showed us in terms of women's rights is that you think you have a right to our women. And that's not even
Mm,
mentioning the misery of the woman over there in the West. Why, you raised her from childhood to be an object, just a decoration to be enjoyed by all and sundry. You teach her to conform
yeah.
to the ever more degrading societal standards, to wear
Yeah.
revealing clothing.
Yeah. And then they go on. This is what I was talking about earlier. They go on TikTok and they wear these tight dresses with a light in the back, and they show you a silhouette of all the goods. That's what he's talking about.
To be a sex object, to be eye candy. And then you have the audacity to claim that you believe in women's rights and equality. I mean, even your female Olympic athletes, who are the best at what they do, you require them to dress like pole dancers in their competitions. And all you do is ogle them.
No, no, that one I don't agree with. They are the pole dancers are definitely wearing different outfits.
Look at them and gawk at them instead of appreciate their discipline and hard work and training and skills. You know, you created OnlyFans and taught your women that what you truly value is degeneracy. You know, she could go to school, she could get degrees, she could become a
Yeah,
doctor, she could become a lawyer, should become an engineer or a CEO, but she'll never get rich faster than if she gets naked on camera and defiles herself for strangers.
yeah,
That's what your society rewards women for.
yeah.
You know, a stripper can make more money than an executive. You're teaching them what you want.
It depends on the executive. Take it easy there, killer. Some executives in this country. I mean, we have, I forget how much they said, however many millionaires. There's a lot of executives, and executive women that are making way more money than shaking the ass on the pole, because I mean, otherwise they might be shaking the ass on that pole too. Like we have this warped sense of hunger for money and power and stuff like that. That's just whack. We've what he's saying is basically we've sold our soul to money and to ratchetness. And again, like going to hip hop. Hip hop used to be the voice of the streets, and we would tell you what was happening in the streets, and but that's part of how we communicated. And now it's like sexy red and some stupid stuff that we don't even understand the words half the damn time.
To do what you want them to be because your whole system denotes value exclusively in terms of pay packages. So you are implanting in women's minds and imposing on women's psyches that this type of behavior is what makes them valuable in your society. You know, more than half of the women in your society, more than half, feel pressured into performing abnormal sexual acts that they're not comfortable with just because their partners have warped their brains on pornography. So now they expect their wives and their girlfriends to act like porn stars. Meanwhile, most of those porn stars are out of their minds on drugs and
Yeah.
numb from childhood
Yeah.
trauma.
Yeah.
But you want normal women to act like that. And
Yeah.
you're
This is very similar. The dynamic between a lot of the girls that we see uh, subscribing to this way of life, a lot of times they have daddy issues, and a lot of times they had a really rough come up, and they've been ignored and they've been mistreated, and they've just and it's a slippery slope. And so then to help maneuver this rough way of life and having to come to grips with the fact that you have to find ways to pay your bills, and it's not what you wanted to do as a kid. A lot of times folks will go to, whether it be alcohol or drugs or whatever the case may be, to help pacify that inner turmoil that's being carried. And what we're starting to learn too is there are memories and there are things that you have gone through that you pass on to your child. So not it's not the fact that your child went through that, but you went through that, and biologically you're passing all of this baggage to your child. And then we wonder why our kids are, they don't listen and they beat up the teachers and they do all these things. It's our kids are rough, and especially in the inner city, like when you wake up as a kid with nothing and you have to take care of yourself, or you have, maybe your parent had to go to work, and so you have to dress yourself, you have to get your books, you have to, if you have food in the refrigerator, you have to make yourself breakfast, and then you have to get to school, and then you have to do the school, and then you have to come home. And maybe there's a lot of times where there's not lunch at school. I'm talking from personal experience. I've had to do a lot of these things where, as a 10, 11, 12, 13-year old, you have to be grown already. And then fast forward to being 17, and planes, I was in the military, and planes are practicing bombing you. Like, of course I'm going to have issues.
they don't. 87% of college age women report being compelled to do these types of abnormal things sexually that they don't want to do because of your great feminist society.
Not to mention, this is just because, porn and all that stuff. And if you force your partner to do things that they're not into, you need to go take a break and go, I don't know, go do something with yourself. But he's not even touching on the fact that there's Harvey Weinsteins and Diddy's. Well, he kind of touched on Diddy, but no, no Diddy. But we're not even talking about the ladies that might have to do something that they don't want to do sexually in the professional sense. Casting couches are a thing, or have been a thing. You know what I mean? Like, through history, women have had to do dumb shit just to get that job or get that role or whatever the case may be. And then what he's saying is, all of these things are happening, and then we're going to judge another religion as to whether or not they have respect for women. Do we even have respect for women?
Girls as young as 13 say that they feel pressured to try to look and behave just like women in pornographic videos. 13.
That's
And
wild.
because you dismiss the necessity of marriage, promiscuity has become normalized in your culture,
That sure
making
is.
women feel compelled to become sexually intimate much earlier than they're comfortable doing.
And then you add all of these apps that just makes it way too easy. Way too easy. I have this conversation all the time too, where there's a lot of these younger women and they're on the apps and they're swiping and they're doing all the things, and then they come to me and arguing that all men ain't shit and all this stuff, and I'm like, you make it too easy. You make it too easy. If all I have to do is swipe and get some and get some draws, then okay, that's just how it goes. I, and it's unfortunate because the young ladies think that that's what they need to do to stay competitive in the dating world. We where are we going as a society? Where are we going?
They make to feel like something's wrong with them if they don't do it. And then you gaslight them into thinking that this is freedom. You gaslight
Yeah.
them into thinking that this is women's liberation. You're psychologically abusing the women in your society on every level.
Yeah.
69% of girls in the
Pause.
5th to 12th grades report that magazine pictures influence their idea of what they're supposed to look like. 45% of women report feeling pressure to try to achieve a certain body shape or a certain size. And 1 in 5 women report that because of this, they experience body dysmorphic disorder, wherein they think that there's something wrong with how they look. They think there's something wrong with how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made them if they don't look like a supermodel in some magazine or look like a porn star in some video. You know, you claim to believe in women's equality, but the data shows that women in your society are still objectified and still marginalized. 60% of women
And it
report
doesn't
feeling.
count and it doesn't count that a woman is doing it to herself. I understand that women have the power to do whatever they want and they have the intelligence and they have all that stuff. All the potential is there. But apps, magazines, all these things convince these women that they have to shake their ass to get anywhere in this world. It's just not right.
To try to dress in a way that is socially considered to be attractive or sexually attractive by societal standards, which just means showing men more of their bodies, exposing more of themselves to men. 45% of women report feeling that they need to show more skin and show more skin that they're even comfortable showing in order to be considered attractive in your society. Look at
This is what happens in the music industry too. The music industry will not. I mean, if you're incredibly talented and your say your voice carries you to success, that's one thing. But there are a lot of women that have told me in the music industry that have told me if you really want to make it, you have to show way more skin than you're a lot of times than you're comfortable showing.
doing to women. The media perpetuates this culture of objectification, with women being depicted in revealing clothing in 70% of advertisements.
Yeah.
Now, women are exposed, on average, to 5,000 advertisements per day. And 70% of those advertisements feature women in revealing clothing, meaning you are constantly messaging to women that they have to be as undressed as possible if they want to be socially acceptable. That's your society. So, of course, your women are suffering. They're suffering from psychological.
Now, there are women that choose to do these things. There are some women that want to be scantily clad, and there's some women that want to be whatever, and that's their right. That's their right. And I think that that's where um, strict religious views start to conflict with true freedom. You know, like women want to dress a certain way and they don't a lot of times they don't care what a guy thinks or a girl thinks. They just want to dress the way that they want to dress, and they roll out. There's a large segment that will dress trying to impress whoever it is that they're trying to impress out in the world.
Consequences, the psychological consequences of these types of pressures, this type of gaslighting and manipulation. At least 1 in 5 women report experiencing anxiety or depression due to the pressure that they feel to wear revealing clothing that they don't want to wear. And they're obviously more likely to develop dissatisfaction and low self-esteem about themselves and how they look. And you pressure them into looking and acting like porn stars. Pressure them to have sex before they're ready, and pressure them to do things in the bedroom that they don't want to do. Not to mention the real physiological detrimental repercussions and the ramifications and the consequences of promiscuity on a woman, mentally and emotionally and physically. That's why your women are the most depressed, the most neurotic, the most medicated, why they have the most anxiety, the most stress, the most mental and psychological illnesses, because they live in the most woman-hating society in the world. And you still have the nerve to expect us to assure you that we care about women. Everything about your civilization declares your utter contempt for women. I'm telling you, you don't know who you are. You don't know what you are. You don't know what kind of a society you live in. You live in a world of lies. Forget about trying to correct your misconceptions about Islam. You have nothing but misconceptions about your own so-called civilization. It's not a civilization, it's a hallucination. And it's absolutely comical, the extent of your lack of self-awareness about your own culture, about your own society.
He's not wrong there.
You know, when I lived in the Middle East, I had Americans back home worried for my safety because they thought that every place in the Arab world was nonstop bombs going off, violence and bloodshed all the time. Meanwhile, you've had over 650 mass shootings in America just last year. Not to mention the fact that most of the bombs going off in the Middle East are American bombs being dropped from American warplanes. Whatever violence we have in the Muslim world, you brought to the Muslim world. America's #1 export is violence. As a matter of fact, it's one of the only things that you still manufacture over there. It's one of the only things you still excel at, better than anyone else. Is Islam a religion of peace? You must be joking. You've dropped 500,000 bombs on us in just the last 25 years and killed over 1 million Muslims in just the last 25 years. That's not even including the current genocide in Gaza that you're committing. Again, this is like the BTK killer wanting someone to assure him that they don't subscribe to violence. What are you even talking about? Your whole society, your whole so-called civilization is violently extremist, more than anyone else has ever been. You love to threaten your enemies with bombing them back to the Stone Age without it ever registering in your mind that this is a Stone Age mentality. The only difference between you and a caveman is that you have gadgets, but you're the land of the free, right? Islam is so strict, it's so rigid, you know. Muslims don't have any freedom. Meanwhile, America has more laws and more regulations than any country on earth. You have more laws and more regulations than Saudi Arabia, more than Afghanistan, more than any Muslim country. You can't even remodel your kitchen in America if you're a homeowner, which you probably aren't. But if you are a homeowner and you have a kitchen and you want to remodel,
listen to the digs, and they're rightfully so. We can't afford houses, and even if we do, we have to go through so many rigorous licensing things just to redo our kitchen. We are a land of laws, that's for sure.
you can't even do that without a permit. You have to get a permit to remodel your own kitchen. Your government decides what food you can eat, what food you're allowed to eat, what food is legal for you to eat.
And it's usually
Meanwhile,
trash.
they allow genetically modified foods, fake food.
If you've ever been in America and you've been to a house, you will notice that it's a lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of times you have a house, then some grass, and then sidewalk, and then a little more grass, and then the street, right? So this guy was teaching people how to dig up that little bit of grass that's right next to the street, dig it up, plant some vegetables, and grow it. Well, he got ticketed for teaching people how to grow their own food. Does that make any sense? And now that groceries are going to be outrageous, you have to learn how to grow your own tomatoes and grow your own food. So at least that way, when tomatoes go up to $57 a piece, at least you'll know how to grow tomatoes. So this guy is swinging on the West incredibly hard, but he's not lying. He's not lying.
Foods with all sorts of additives and chemicals and what have you. And a farmer,
how are you going to live? How are you going to live when your vegetables, your food causes cancer? Everything is genetically modified. And I understand that a lot of times scientists are doing it because they're trying to make, if you've ever seen a tomato farmer, they have these huge, when they harvest the tomatoes, they have these huge trucks and all these tomatoes are like piled on top of themselves. Well, if you had just a normal tomato, it's probably going to crush under the pressure of all the other tomatoes. Well, they grow tomatoes so they can withstand that pressure, so they last a little longer, so they make it to the grocery store. So yeah, you have to learn about growing tomatoes, growing vegetables, and having a compost pile and all that stuff. Because things are going to get wild. Things are going to get wild.
Own land, he's not even allowed to sell food to you right from his land, right from his farm, right out of his crops, fresh, without FDA approval. He even needs government approval to give you an apple from a tree. Your government even decides how hot your shower is allowed to be. It's absurd. But of course, you'll defend all of those laws. You'll defend all of those laws because you'll say they're there to protect you. Okay, if you say so. But you don't have a choice, do you? You don't have the freedom to not follow those rules, do you? We have a comparatively minuscule set of laws, most of which are self-imposed. With no external monitoring, no external enforcement, we follow them by our own conscience. But what you mean...
I will say, we went to Austria a few years ago, and I was talking to my Austrian friend, and there was a group of us. We took the subway, or we took their train to go hang out and stuff. And when you walk into the train station, there's a little ticket booth. You go up, you buy your ticket, and you walk in. There's no gates, no anything. In Chicago, there's so many damn turnstiles and all kinds of stuff happening, but you have to pay, and then the turnstile lets you in, and then... So when we caught the train in Austria, I noticed that there wasn't a lot of gates, and there was no gates. And then I was talking to my friend, and I said, hey, like, it's really cool that you guys don't even have a ticket taker. I said, what's with the gates and stuff like that? He said, did you go to the machine? I said, yeah. He goes, did you buy a ticket? He goes, yeah. He goes, then why the hell do we need gates? It's wild how different different governments treat adults. And to be fair, this is probably a land of laws because we have a bunch of dummies who need laws to keep from hurting themselves. Like, if there is a law, I don't know if there is or not, but I'm going to assume that there is because I don't think that this guy is trying to lie about the temperature of water coming from your pipes. But imagine how many people had to burn themselves with hot water for the government to be like, okay, we're wasting a lot of money dealing with people who burnt themselves with hot water. Imagine how many people had to get hurt for the government to finally say, look, let's stop burning. Let's stop letting these dummies burn themselves. And that could be a sign of possibly a more developed society. I don't know. I can't say that because, his argument is we think that we're developed. We think that we have a lot of things figured out, but we treat people like shit. We don't educate people. We don't build stuff. if there's a great idea, so there's a corporation that's going to buy it to either grow it and g- take as much money out of the idea as possible, or they buy it and they put it on the shelf so it shrivels up and it doesn't become a competitor to whatever it is product that they're working on.
By how strict and how rigid we are. What you're talking about is basically all the sins and the debauchery that your government does allow.
Yeah.
So that's actually the freedom that you're talking about. You're talking about the freedom to be uncivilized, the freedom to be primitive, the freedom to be hedonistic. And that's what makes you, in your mind, more civilized than us. The freedom to
Yeah.
be uncivilized. You think that makes you more civilized. And somehow that makes sense to you. I'm telling you, your society, your so called civilization is playing you for a fool. They're even fooling you about your own prosperity. I mean, take the
Oh,
United States, the richest country in the world,
hang on. Here we go. Here we go.
right? But just look at different states in America. Take a state inside of America, any of the 50 states, and look at it as if it was a country. Look at its GDP, look at its standard of living, look at its
Right.
quality of life, look at its
Right.
infrastructure, and so on. Say if you
Right.
took Mississippi, if Mississippi was a country, or Idaho, or Montana, or New Mexico, or Kentucky,
Kentucky.
if those
Now, this is what frustrates me. I'm from Chicago. I lived in Miami. I lived in LA. I've lived close to San Francisco. All these metropolitan areas, right? And all those states make so much money. So much money. But if we decided to just zip up the purse, all of these places that he's about to talk about would dry up and go away. Kentucky. The only reason Kentucky is still around is because it gets money from all the bigger all the states that make more money.
states, those American states, if those were countries, or
Yeah,
they'd be equivalent economies, economically, they'd be equivalent to an Argentina, or to a Colombia, or to
if
Thailand.
that, if
They
that.
would be low to middle income countries.
Yeah,
Those American states, they would be low to
100%.
middle income countries. That's the reality of your life. Most Americans live in conditions, they live in economies within their state that are exactly the same as countries that you would regard as third world countries, as developing countries.
Yeah,
That's how you're living in real life. I mean, unless you're among the so-called coastal elites, your state is basically a third world country. And even in those coastal elite states, you know perfectly well that there are cities and neighborhoods inside of those elite states, those rich states. There are cities and neighborhoods that are just as poor as any poor city in the global south. But they've got you thinking that you're better off than people in the developing world. They've got you thinking that you're better off than people in the global south.
yeah. Meanwhile, not that it's the global south, but Dubai, they offer people health care and they set people up for success. You have a certain basic amount of safety net things. Healthcare is a huge one. But what they want to do is they want to attract business so then you can grow your business there and you can reach a little farther and you can push a little farther because you know for a fact that your healthcare is covered and whatever else. I know that there's like something that has to do with education and all that stuff, but it starts to get a little, for me, it starts to get a little in the gray area because I don't know if the education thing uh, is offered to people who go there and live there, or if it's just the Dubai people, like the natural Dubai people. If you are a person from Dubai, you have nothing to worry about. You have it's a form of universal basic income, so everyone gets a check. So if you're working, that's just extra money on top of that. But you have your education handled, you have your healthcare handled, you are set. And what they want to do is they want their people to push harder, to push farther, because they know if your people succeed, you succeed as a nation. And the United States specifically, they don't do that. Everything is for the people that have. And if you don't have, you have to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and you have to struggle and you have to do all the things and blah, blah, blah. And even when you get there, you're still not welcome.
Most of the states in America were countries, they'd probably be trying to join BRICS. And the same goes for the UK. If you're not living in London, if you're in, say, the north of England, it's the same. It's a third world. You're in the third world. If you're in the north of England, you're in the third world. You're in a developing country. You are deeply and comprehensively misled about your societies, and you still expect Muslims to answer you about anything? You're standing there butt naked in a cowboy hat, telling us that our suit is out of fashion. No, there's no point in trying to make you understand us when you don't even remotely understand yourselves. The whole world has been indulging you, has been indulging the West, and what they want to believe about themselves. We've been indulging you for far too long. It's time for you to start justifying yourself to us. We're not going to pretend that you're in any sort of a position to demand us to justify ourselves to you, when the reality is that no one is and no one has ever been as violent, as oppressive, as misogynistic, as restrictive, and as opposed to liberty and to human dignity as Western so-called civilization.
Yeah, that's going to be a hard pill to swallow for a lot of folks. This video is going to be a hard pill to swallow for a lot of folks, because it's hard to look at yourself and look at your areas of improvement, we'll call it. It's hard to reflect on yourself and to make yourself a better person, because a lot of us, you know, we like to think that we're right, and we like to think that we have things figured out. And it's hard to understand that maybe, just maybe, we don't. So when we have someone from, I don't know where he's from, but he's definitely very critical of where we're from. And he has a point. He has a point. We talk about equality. We talk about women's rights. We talk about minorities' rights and all this stuff. And our people are struggling. And the people that don't have are tricked into believing that they're going to have, you know, a gateway to the promised land of the rich and the famous. If you don't have money and you come from nothing, the people that have money and have had money for a long time, it would be hard for people, new money, to find a spot in old money places. It's just difficult. It's just difficult. They don't want you there. They don't want you there, and your well-being is not being thought of at all. They're busy drinking champagne. They're busy eating good food that doesn't kill them. That's not from McDonald's. So, for me, this was a tough one. This was a tough one to pay attention to, because very similar to what he was saying. Like, I do think that we have something good here, and I do think that we have a lot of bright minds, and I do think that we have the potential for being a great country. We just co-signed to some silliness, and then we gaslight people on the news and in the media saying, hey, look, we're the greatest. We do this, and we got a bunch of dummies running in the streets. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Share it with each and every one of your friends. And if you want to come hang out with me and watch videos while I work on creative projects, hit that subscribe button and click on the little bell that's right there next to the subscribe button. So every time I come out with something new, you'll be alerted.